Dr. David Sattler is a professor of psychology at Bellingham's Western Washington University. Dr. Sattler specializes in psychological distress following natural disasters like tsunamis, hurricanes, earthquakes, terrorist attacks, you name it. Dr. Sattler, thank you for being a guest on Northwest Notebook.
It's my pleasure, thank you.
Now, you're involved in a project going on in Thailand.
Yes, after the Indian Ocean tsunami on December 26, 2004, 250,000 people lost their lives and more than 2.3 million people were homeless. I took students over to Khao, Thailand to survey and ask people who had gone through that terrible, devastating tsunami what their experiences were and what their needs were. And as a result of that program, we found that people were very, very anxious about new tsunamis coming. In fact, they didn't have information about new tsunami warnings that were being developed in that area. And I wondered, what could we do to get this information to large numbers of people? Many of these people didn't have money for televisions or radios or newspapers. And we thought, what if we built an educational center, a museum, that could provide this information to people? And as a result, we hooked up with a very generous man in Khao, Thailand, who donated a space for us. He turns out to be the brother of Thum Bo, who owns the Thai House restaurant here in Bellingham. And
small world.
It's a small world and wonderful connections. And we built a museum. We've had more than 10,000 people in the first 3 months come through.
So good response then.
Amazing response from people from all over the world, and just amazed at the really positive reactions.
Now I have to ask you, with everything that's happened in this country, 9/11, Katrina, you talk about educating people overseas. Are we educated here in America enough about disasters?
Well, American Red Cross and Federal Emergency Management Agency do wonderful things to educate our citizens. Clearly more can be done.
What have you learned about people's collective psyches when they go through experiences like 9/11, the tsunami, or Katrina?
There tends to be a very set pattern where people actually pull together. There's a collective sense where we need to pull together and help one another out. And so you see communities pull together and share resources in the first few months after a disaster. That's a very common reaction, but of course it's a very terrifying situation when your life is threatened or your home is threatened, and so people do have some mental health reactions. They experience distress. In very limited circumstances, people might experience post-traumatic stress disorder.
Are we prepared to handle people psychologically, not just to rebuild homes, rebuild lives, but psychologically, are we prepared to help people?
Well, we have a very well-trained professional community of mental health experts, psychologists, psychiatrists, social workers, and others who do have a good bit of information about this. There actually is a responder network of mental health experts who are ready to come in. But your question of be prepared is very prudent in Bellingham and the Northwest. As you know, the Cascadia subduction zone is just off the Olympic Peninsula, runs all the way up through Vancouver Island. So we are in fact at risk of a very powerful earthquake as well as a very powerful tsunami. We need to be prepared. We need to have supplies in our homes and be prepared for that event.
Do you think the government's doing enough to prepare us?
The government is taking good action. More could be done to educate individual citizens on what they need to do. But you know, these are rare events. That is, they don't happen every day. So you may have supplies on hand for a year or two, nothing happens, and then people question, should I get my supplies again? Because to some degree they were reinforced not to prepare again because the event didn't happen. But we need to be diligent. We need to have those supplies on hand.
Not to get political, but how important is it for leaders to be seen in a time of crisis? I think of George Bush standing at ground zero with the bullhorn and how that rallied the country. I also think about his disappearing act during Katrina. How important is it for our leaders to be seen?
Well, it's very important to have good leadership. It's important for people to know that the government and the emergency response agencies are taking appropriate action and prompt action, and having a leader's presence sometimes shows that. But of course, in addition to just having the leader there, you need that backup. You need the actual work undergoing. You need people to see that. And sometimes the media can help show people the terrific actions that people are taking. For example, as you know, at the end of October, we had the California wildfires in Southern California, which went through San Diego and Los Angeles counties. Well, the media did a very good job showing citizens in that area what the firefighters were doing to respond.
Why did this pique your curiosity? What was it about this subject?
Well, back in 1992, I was a professor in Charleston, South Carolina, and Hurricane Andrew, a Category 5 storm, slammed into southern Florida. And it was fascinating to look at what people were doing to pull together. I'm a social psychologist. I'm interested in how people work together and that collective response that we talked about earlier. And it's just grown into a wonderful, important program where we travel all around the world to talk to survivors and see what their needs are. And the goal of all of this is try to improve intervention and recovery programs. What can we do as a community? What can we do as professionals to help people rebuild their lives and move forward?
Dr. David Sattler, Professor of Psychology at Western Washington University. Thanks for being a guest
My
on
pleasure.
Northwest Notebook.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.